All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're tackling something that's been, drilled into our heads for decades, only to be totally flipped on its head by a modern wellness trend. I am, of course, talking about skipping breakfast. So, is it a major health hazard, or is it actually a smart hack for a busy life? Let's get into it.
I mean, come on. We've all heard this a million times, right? Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It's practically written in stone. For generations, this was the undisputed champion of dietary advice. The golden rule for starting your day off right.
But then, a challenger stepped into the ring, and that challenger was intermittent fasting. All of a sudden, people were intentionally skipping breakfast as a strategy for weight loss and better health. And just like that, all that old wisdom got thrown into question, creating a whole lot of confusion for the rest of us.
So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the case for breakfast, the traditional champion. Then, we're going to give the modern challenger its turn and explore why people are skipping it. After that, we'll get to the verdict, trying to figure out what's actually right for you. And finally, if you do decide to go the breakfast-free route, we'll cover some best practices to do it right. Okay, first up, let's dive into the evidence that backs up that classic advice. And honestly, the arguments here are really strong, especially when we look at the data on kids and teenagers. The numbers, well, they're pretty staggering. So, what does this number mean? Well, this comes from a massive review that looked at over 286,000 young people. And what they found was that in nearly 95% of the subjects they looked at, skipping breakfast was linked to being overweight or obese. An association that strong, that's really hard to ignore. And you know why? It doesn't just stop with weight. A ton of observational studies have linked skipping breakfast to a whole host of other risks, especially around your heart and metabolism. We're talking things like a worse lipid profile, that's your cholesterol, right? Higher blood pressure, and even increased insulin resistance. Some studies even show it can mess with your cortisol levels, your body's main stress hormone, which could have some really serious long-term effects. But the impact isn't just metabolic. It can also hit you, well, right in the gut. Gastroenterologists are actually warning that if you consistently miss your morning meal, you could be throwing your entire digestive system out of whack. And that can lead to a whole cascade of issues. Let's take a look at how that happens. So how exactly does this happen? Well, think about it. First, after you've been fasting all night, your body is basically waiting for fuel. If it doesn't get it, your metabolism can slow right down to conserve energy. Second, your stomach starts producing acid because it's anticipating a meal. With no food to work on, that extra acid can lead to stuff like heartburn or acid reflux. And finally, your digestive system. It loves a routine. Skipping meals can totally disrupt that rhythm, leading to things like bloating and just irregular bowel movements.
Okay, wow, that all sounds pretty bad, right? So, why on earth would anyone choose to skip breakfast? Well, let's flip over to the other side of the argument now and see how this modern challenger makes its case. And it all starts by questioning the very evidence we just looked at.
Okay, this is the crucial point, so lean in for this one. Most of the studies that show all those negative effects, they're what scientists call observational. And trust me, understanding that one little word changes absolutely everything.
And this slide really breaks down the difference perfectly. An observational study just finds connections or correlations. So it might notice that, hey, people who eat breakfast also tend to have other healthy habits, like exercising more. But it can't prove that breakfast is what's causing them to be healthier. A randomized controlled trial, or an RCT, on the other hand, that's the gold standard. It actually tests for cause and effect by taking two groups, telling one to eat breakfast and the other to skip it, and then measuring what happens. It's way more direct.
And here is the big twist. When researchers actually ran those gold standard RCTs, and they were looking specifically at weight loss in adults, they found something really surprising. Just recommending that people either eat or skip breakfast had no significant impact on weight loss. This completely challenges the idea that breakfast is this magic bullet for weight management, at least in the adult population. So what are the potential upsides then? Well, for starters, it can be a really simple way to cut your overall calorie intake. One study found it led to an average reduction of about 253 calories a day. It's also, of course, the key strategy behind a lot of popular intermittent fasting plans. And contrary to what you might think, reviews have found that short-term fasting, like just skipping a morning meal, doesn't really hurt your cognitive function as an adult. Plus, and let's be honest here, it saves a ton of time on a busy morning. So here we are. We have these really compelling arguments on both sides. On one hand, you've got this strong observational data linking skipping breakfast to health risks, especially for kids. But on the other hand, you've got these high-quality trials in adults that question its role in weight loss. So what's the verdict? Well, the answer isn't about some universal rule. It's really all about you.
Okay, so let's get really practical here. Who should stick with breakfast? Well, you should absolutely prioritize it if you're a child, a teenager, or pregnant. The evidence is just super strong for these groups. Same goes if you have diabetes, if you're an athlete, or frankly, if you're just someone who gets dizzy and gets that brain fog when you're hungry. Now, who might be okay skipping? It could be a good fit if you're a healthy adult, especially if you're doing intermittent fasting, you're just genuinely not hungry in the mornings, and, this is key, you're confident you can eat balanced, nutrient-dense meals later in the day.
And I really want to stress, for some groups, this isn't just a friendly recommendation, it's a critical health directive. Health authorities, like Dublin's Rotunda Hospital, are crystal clear on this. Pregnant women, for example, should never skip a meal. The nutritional demands are just way too high, making regular meals completely non-negotiable. Okay, so let's say you've looked at all the evidence, you've taken a good look at your own health, and you've decided that, hey, maybe skipping breakfast could work for my lifestyle. The absolute key is to do it smartly so you can avoid all those potential pitfalls we talked about earlier. So here are the non-negotiables if you're going to do this. First, and most importantly, listen to your body. If you feel awful, then this isn't for you. Simple as that. Second, stay hydrated with water or maybe some herbal tea. And no, just chugging coffee all morning doesn't count. That can actually increase your stress hormones. Third, you have to plan your later meals. The biggest mistake people make is overcompensating with junk food later because they're starving. So make sure your lunch and dinner are packed with protein and fiber to keep you full and actually nourished. So after digging into both sides of this really long-standing debate, we come right back to the most important question of all. What does this all mean for you? What's the right choice for your body, your health, and your life? And here's the final takeaway. The era of one-size-fits-all dietary rules, it's over. The science is pretty clear that there is no single right answer for everyone. So whether you're a die-hard breakfast eater or a committed skipper, the best approach is always the one that makes you feel energized, nourished, and in control of your health. The real power isn't in some catchy headline. It's in learning to listen to your own body. Let's tackle a big one. Skipping breakfast. Is it a health hack or a really bad idea? You've heard this a million times, right? It's been drilled into us for decades. But with things like intermittent fasting, you have to wonder, is that old advice still true? Okay, first let's look at the case for breakfast. For some people, it's absolutely crucial. For kids and teens, studies show that skipping it can lead to some pretty serious health risks. It can also mess with your digestion, slow your metabolism, and make you overeat later. And it goes beyond your stomach. Missing that first meal can even throw your hormones out of whack. For example, one study found women who regularly skip breakfast tend to have higher blood pressure. So with all these potential downsides, why are so many people intentionally doing it? Well, a big reason is the rise of diets like time-restricted eating, or TRE. And here's the appeal. It often helps people cut about 550 calories a day almost automatically. But this is where science gets tricky. We have to separate correlation from actual causation. In fact, one huge trial found that simply telling people to skip breakfast had no effect on weight loss. So what's the final verdict? Well, it really depends on you. It is not one size fits all. The science actually gives us a pretty clear framework. For some groups, breakfast is a must. Take pregnant women, for instance. Health authorities are crystal clear. Never, ever skip a meal. So it's less about the timing and way more about the quality of what you eat all day. The bottom line is, you need to ask yourself, are you listening to your body or just a clock?